everybody. I am Reverend Sarah Neve Fisher, and I am the senior pastor at Rolling Oaks Christian Church in San Antonio. Introduce yourself.
And I'm Lenora.
And how old are you, Lenora?
8, and soon I will be 9.
By the time you all see this, Lenora will be 9. She's in 4th grade, doing some school from home. Maybe some of you are doing that too, some virtual school. So this year has been kind of different, hasn't it? School has started and back to school has been a little bit different, whether you're doing it from home or somewhere else, or whether you're going to school and having to wear a mask all day. It's probably really different than it was last year. You all are doing a really great job at that, even as different and as hard as it is. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about a story from the Bible of another person who found herself in a brand new situation that was a little bit scary, and she didn't really know what to do about it at first. Sound familiar? Have you ever been in a situation like that? A new situation that's a little bit scary? Yeah. What about, I wonder if you have ever been in a situation where something bad was happening to somebody else. Maybe you saw somebody getting bullied, or something was going wrong that was hurting other people. Have you ever had that happen? Have you ever seen that happen?
I'm thinking.
A time that maybe you saw somebody else getting called names or bullied or something?
Yes.
Yeah? Can you tell me about it, or do you not want to talk about it? Either way is fine. No, okay, that's fine. I know there have been times that I have seen people getting hurt and mistreated and bullied, and sometimes it's hard to know how to respond and if we should stand up and say anything or not. And there are definitely times when we shouldn't say anything if we could get hurt. There's definitely times that going to tell an adult is the best thing to do. But sometimes we maybe, have you ever had it happen where you see somebody else getting made fun of, but you don't really want to say anything because you don't want to get made fun of either, right? Well, today we are going to hear about a story kind of like this. So this story is about Esther, and there's a whole book of the Bible named Esther. Did you know there's only 2 books in the Bible named after women? Do you know how many books are in the Bible altogether? No, you don't have to name them. There's 66 in the Bible altogether, and 2 of them are named after women, Esther and Ruth. So this story is about Esther, and it takes place a very, very, very long time ago, thousands of years ago, right? So here's what happened. Esther was, actually, we're going to start the story before we even meet Esther. So before we meet Esther, the story starts at the king's palace, right? And the king calls his wife, Vashti, in to hang out with him and his friends and dance for them, and she says no, and he gets really mad and kicks her out of the palace. There's a whole lot more that goes along with that, but for the sake of our story today, we'll leave it there. So he kicks her out of the palace, and then the king wants a new wife. So he starts looking for a new wife. Now, in those times and in that way, it wasn't like dating, like maybe some of your older siblings or parents or friends or aunts and uncles do now. It's that they would date, or that the king brought a whole bunch of women to the palace and chose one. It's kind of weird. We don't do that anymore. Anyway, so Esther, before she went to the palace, Esther lived with her cousin. Her cousin's name is Mordecai. Now, keep track of this and imagine it playing out in your mind kind of like a movie, because this would make a really good movie plot. So Esther's cousin, Mordecai, tells her before she goes that she shouldn't tell anybody that she is Jewish. In other words, that she is one of God's people. So she goes off, they say goodbye, and then Mordecai overhears the king's guards plotting about murdering him. Dun, dun, dun. So Mordecai goes and tells the king, hey, listen, your guards are going to kill you. And so then the king finds out it's true. And of course, he's so grateful to Mordecai. And he is honored in the king's book of deeds, which is I guess a really fancy diary, right? And is welcomed into the king's court, but then they find out that he is Jewish. He is one of God's people. Meanwhile, over here, new scene. The king appoints a man named Haman to be the leader of all of the officials, kind of like his right-hand man, right? So Haman commands that all of the other officials bow down to him, and Mordecai says no because Mordecai only follows God. And Mordecai says, I only bow down for God, and I'm not going to bow down for any other person. Well, so Haman does not like this very much. And then Haman decides not only is he out to get Mordecai, he wants to kill all of the Jewish people. It's really, really bad. The king agrees because he doesn't really have all of the information and seals a decree saying that they would roll dice to see which day this terrible plot would be carried out. You with me so far?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I can't keep track of Haman and.
You're right. We should have had some kind of a prop. I'll tell you what, Lenora. We're gonna pause this, and you're gonna go get some little characters, and then we'll meet right back here. We're back. Now we're back with some helpers to help us tell the story to keep track of everything. So we have so far the king. This is the king. Here's Esther. So remember, the king banished the queen and is looking for a new queen. Esther doesn't stand up very well. Esther comes onto the stage. So she's, right now, we're not talking about Esther right now. She's kind of just like hanging out at the palace waiting. And then there is Mordecai. Mordecai is Esther's cousin. So they were family and lived together before Esther was called to the palace. There's Mordecai. And then there is Haman. Haman is the bad guy of the story. So here's what I want you to do from now on, okay? Every time I say the word Haman, I want you to go, boo. Can you do that?
Boo.
Yep. So this actually is kind of a tradition that people, when they would read this story, would have maybe like noisemakers or something and would kind of like boo every time they heard his name. So in that tradition, every time we talk about Haman,
boo.
Okay. All right. So does this help? Are we caught up now?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to our story. Okay. So remember, where we left off in the story is that Mordecai has a plan to kill all of God's people and gets the king to sign off on it because Mordecai is mad at Haman. Okay. I'm sorry. I said this the wrong way. Haman is mad at Mordecai. Okay. So let's pick back up. That night, the king finds out that Mordecai had never been honored for his service to the king. The king asks Haman how a hero should be honored. And Haman says, with a parade, because Haman thinks that the king was talking about him. Haman thinks that the parade is going to be for him, but the parade wasn't going to be for him. The parade was going to be for Mordecai. So there's this huge parade, right? They're all parading, throwing out candy. Probably not, but let's just imagine that. And then after the parade, Haman and the king.
Boo.
Oh, thank you.
I forgot to say that.
Okay, after the parade, Haman
Boo.
and the king go to Esther's banquet. She's going to have a big dinner, right? Now, here is where Esther comes into the story. Esther has the ability to tell the king that what he's doing is wrong and that what he's doing is really going to hurt a lot of people. But she's kind of afraid to do that because she's afraid what might happen to her or what might happen to her family, Mordecai, and what might happen to all of the people that she loves. So Esther goes and asks Mordecai, how am I going to do this? Because it's really scary. Because all of these people could get hurt and are getting hurt. And I care about them a lot. And God cares about them. But what am I supposed to do? I'm just one person. Mordecai says to her, you are here for such a time as this. You are here in this place because you are the person that can speak truth and that can speak love and that can help other people. So Esther is incredibly brave and courageous. She does the thing that is very, very scary. Because remember, the king kicked out the last woman that spoke up to him, right? The last woman that told him no, he kicked her out and exiled her. So Esther is understandably a little bit afraid. But Esther knows that God is with her. Esther knows that God loves her. And so Esther tells the king, these are my people. These are God's people that you want to destroy. The king kind of realizes that he was wrong, but what he had decided to do to destroy all these people was done by official decree, and he couldn't go back on an official decree. So the king demands to know who was behind all of this. Esther points to Haman.
Boo.
The king, so all of this time, Haman had this plot to get rid of Mordecai. And you know what the king does? The king says to Haman that he was wrong. And the king punishes Haman instead. So, the end of the day, the king can't change what he has done, but he does allow for the Jewish people to have a chance to live and survive. And it was all because Esther did a brave and difficult and hard thing. And when people were about to get hurt, she said, hey, no, this isn't right. And she stood up to the king. And because of that, the people were saved and the world and history was changed. And the Jewish people, maybe you know someone who is Jewish, they still celebrate the feast, the festival that is in honor of Esther's brave acts. It's called Purim, which is the dice. It's kind of a funny play on words there. So, what I want you to hear is that Esther knew that it was going to be hard, but she knew that people were getting hurt, and so she stood up to the king. She was brave, and she used her voice and said, this isn't right. So what do you think about that story?
I like it.
What is it that you like about it?
It's very inspirational.
Why is it inspirational? What does it inspire you to do?
Stand up for what's right.
So maybe there might be a time when you are seeing somebody get bullied and you can stop and say, hey, that is not nice. Or maybe if you're older, maybe you want to write a letter to one of the leaders, maybe one of the people in Congress or the president or the governor or somebody, and let them know what you think about something, whether good or bad. Maybe you could thank them for something that they've done or tell them that people are getting hurt, whatever that thing is. And you can talk to your parents or another adult about what that might be like. But you could do that. You could write a letter and stand up to a leader, maybe the way like Esther did. There's some other ways that we can do this. And so what I want you to do this week is to think about how you would act if you were Esther, and how you would act if you were in a situation where somebody was going to get hurt. But if you spoke up and said, this isn't okay, maybe it would change things and people would be better and happier. Don't forget that no matter what you do and no matter who you are, God is with you and God loves you. No matter what you've done or where you live or where you're going to school or what any of that looks like, God is with you right now, and God will always be with you. It's been fun being here with you today. I invite you to click the link. There's some fun activities and things that we can do about Esther, or maybe you want to make a little sound, a little noise maker, and you can tell this story. You can read about it in the book of Esther, and every time we hear Haman, we go,
boo.
have a great week. Remember, God loves you, your church loves you, and have a great day.